James Shaw's with us. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
To be fair, as frustrated as you clearly were, if not angry yesterday, this was always coming in some way, shape or form, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've known that for a long time, that the closer we got to the election, the more likely it was that New Zealand First would start misbehaving. So we've just taken that stride, really.
Misbehaving or pointing out facts. I mean, it didn't go to the Greens, but what he did say was the inexperience comes from the Labor Party and the problems have been in the Labor Party and none of the problems have been with his party. That's actually factually correct, isn't it?
No. No, it's not.
Well, who's been sacked and fired? They're all Labor. None of them were his.
Well, they possibly could have been. The problem that they've had, of course, is that they haven't actually been able to exercise discipline over New Zealand First when, in any normal circumstance, they should have been able to. I think if you look at some of the difficulties that the government's had over the last 3 years, a lot of them have actually come down to New Zealand First ankle tapping them and then blaming them for saying that they can't get anything done. So I know that they like to say, we're a force for moderation, but, as I said yesterday, it's more like an agent of chaos.
But you say that, hold on. Well, let me give you a specific example that does apply to your party, the EV, the fee-bait thing, and they stopped that. But isn't that MMP?
Well, yes, it is, but there's a way of operating. So if they were opposed to that, they could have said that 2 years earlier when we set up the work program. It went through many stage gates. They were consulted on many times and then basically killed it off right at the very last minute after the public service had wasted 2 years of effort. And that's a familiar pattern. We had the same thing happen yesterday with the domestic and sexual violence bill, right? So, that's been in gestation for as long as I can remember, actually, in government. And then right at the very last minute, after they'd extended the deadline many, many times, they said, actually, they're not up for it.
So the election comes September 19, the same thing unfolds. You can go into coalition with them and Labor, and that's the alternative for you, will you? Or will you go, 3 years was too much for us, we're out?
No, look, I'm really proud of the stuff that we have gotten done during the course of this government. I know that, there's sort of famous examples of things that we didn't get done, but actually it is worth it. And the other thing, Mike, is all of this assumes that New Zealand First are A, going to be back in Parliament, and B, we're going to need them to form a government. And I don't think that we will, if you look at current numbers.
Well, I'm sure that's what you hope. But having said that, so what we're getting out of this is, yes, it's worth it. He's a pain in the bum, but we'd do it all over again.
Broadly speaking, yes. If that's what it took. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the people of New Zealand to decide what kind of government they have, right? And I would say that if you just had Labor and the Greens, then you would have a more coherent government that was able to get a great deal more done.
But that's another one of Peters' points. There's no question to get on like a house on fire, but we'd also have a wealth tax and capital gains tax and fee bait, and most people wouldn't necessarily want that, would they? Hence, New Zealand First's argument.
Well, look, like I said, I don't have a problem with the idea that in an MMP environment there's a party that acts as a force of moderation in government. That is MMP. However, I think at a time of a global pandemic, when we're going through the worst economic downturn in as long as anybody can, well, in fact, longer than anybody can remember, because it's been so long since the last one, a circumstance like this. In a situation like that, you actually need parties that are responsible, that are stable, and that are coherent, and they're not that.
All right, James, appreciate your time very much. Green co-leader James Shaw this morning.